Wow, you guys really liked the first suggestions video. Hey guys, Trife here, back again with another video. If you don't know, recently I posted a video covering some suggestions in the UBG suggestions channel, and for some reason you guys really liked that video, so I'm making it a proper series. So today I'm covering some style suggestions made by you guys, the community, and seeing what could and couldn't work for these styles, ranging from reworks to actually new styles from the anime and other parts of boxing in general. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. If you guys like the video, you know what to do. Smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, and join the Discord down below. And of course, massive shout out to the 5 members of the Trife channel: Cool Guy Flunker, Arlaws, Lil Z, Mercenary, and Brown Oi. This video is brought to you by GearUP Booster. They're the reason why I have such good ping, and of course, they're the reason why I'm so good at this game. I can't thank GearUP Booster enough. They've done a lot for this channel and for this community, as well as for my content. So please, install GearUP Booster, use their internet carriers to carry yourself to victory and become one of the best at this game. So the first suggestion I have for you guys is an open guard Joe Yabuki no guard style suggestion, made by a guy with a Toto profile picture, so you know this is going to be good, made by the #1 gambler. Alright, let's get into it. Now right off the bat, I'm going to say this style is definitely going to be a legendary. Since I've already read through this, there's way too much for it to stay as a mythic, and since Joe Yabuki is very hyped up and he's basically a legend when it comes to boxing anime, seeing him in any other place other than legendary seems very unlikely. But again, that's up to the discretion of the developers, or well, developer in this case, so we'll just have to see if a style like this gets added. The style of boxing is one of the riskiest but most effective. Though your basic style is rough, you become unstoppable when activating your signature open guard. You have better stat bonuses, huge counter damage, and damage reduction when having an open guard, but have no block in return. The meter bar is called punching bag, and your ultimate is called determined spirit. The passive is dual collision. Within a small time frame you are countered, your punch will persist and counter the enemy as well. However, this passive goes both ways. This refers to the dual interaction mechanic, which the balance team has discussed in the past. It has never been directly implemented. It was actually indirectly added to the game through a bug resulting from rollback. However, it did get patched out pretty quickly. I do think it might be pretty cool as a mechanic, but it also might be a bit disruptive. It actually might occur way too much for any matches we have to play out smoothly. To be fair though, considering the game as is pretty much just a glorified jackpot simulator with every interaction just being rock, paper, scissors, this might not be as bad as you might expect as an addition feature-wise. But generally speaking, if we want this game to improve in terms of its combat, adding dual interactions as a universal mechanic would be pretty hard to implement. But as a style-specific mechanic, I do think it might not be as annoying to deal with, generally speaking. But as you'll probably see, this passive is actually extremely overpowered when put in conjunction with the other abilities and pros this style has. Spoiler alert, this style is very good at countering, so this is extremely strong. You have 2 modes, a base mode, which has a stance similar to Slugger, and an open guard mode. In the base mode, you have basic M1 damage, basic M2 damage, basic M1 speed, Iron Fist M2 speed, Slugger block, so bad block, bad dashes, but not really that bad. You can still double dash, although double dashing is pretty much useless since they completely removed it from fainting, which they didn't actually mention in the update log. But you know what, I'm going to cover this aspect of the update at some point in the future because I completely disagree with it. Tangent aside, the walk speed is basic, has the same range as basic on its M1s, the same M2 range as basic. Its counter damage has a bullet multiplier. Right off the bat, that's insanely broken, because the reason why bullet's counter multiplier is so high, especially on its M2s, is because its base damage is really bad. When it comes to its basics M1, M2 damage, it's actually very good. So adding a counter multiplier on its M2, which is that high, and a counter multiplier that's that high on its M1s, makes the style automatically the best counter style in the game. And that's just off its base mode alone, which is absolutely insane. When it comes to its block damage, it's the same as Ghost and the same block damage as basic on its M2. The cons are that you have 9 HP, so the same as Chronos. You have below average health and stamina regen, and your M1s always start on the left. And you also take less counter damage for your pros. And that's pretty much the only pro you have in this mode, disregarding the actual stats. As for the punching bag and how to get your open guard mode, you get your mode by taking damage, getting hit by an M1, blocking or not, doing 2.5 0.5% per hit, while M2 gives 10% per hit. When activating Open Guard, it will play a quick animation of your hands dropping down to your waist. The animation will last 0.5 seconds and have iframes. An issue I have with this mechanic, particularly the transformation. Look. I've always been against iframes in transformation sequences. I've always thought that if you want the animation to not be interruptible or not punish the opponent for popping it, or just not have risk in popping that transformation, you just make it so it doesn't have a cutscene whatsoever, has no iframes that it can abuse. It simply just pops the transformation and the fight continues as is. Preferably when they're not in combat. Because I've hated, like, for example, in Type Soul, very weird comparison, but in Type Soul, a lot of the transformations that you can pop have iframes. Now, the big transformations where you have to sacrifice, like, your mode, which has a 20-minute cooldown, I understand why that has iframes. On the other hand, your more weaker transformations, particularly like Hollow Mask, for example, have iframe recovery. Like, they basically have evasives for transformations that they can pop at any point, which can completely turn the tide of the match, maybe force you to waste like a really big, high damaging move, which isn't fair whatsoever, especially in a game like that that's so fast paced. And even now, especially when you consider the fact you can confirm ultimates off your M1 string, this might actually gut your ultimate entirely, make it so it doesn't land. Unless, of course, actually, bypasses these iframes. Although that might also introduce the issue of just punishing the transformation with an ultimate, which is completely unfair. But again, like, generally speaking, I don't like iframes for transformations. I just think you should play the animation, but you can still act no matter what, and you can interrupt the animation when it plays out. It might just act as an indicator that you're in that mode, along with the new stance that you take. Now, already the style is pretty crazy. The base abilities it has is absolutely insane, definitely puts it top tier. Now you have another transformation entirely, and this is where it gets game-breakingly broken, potentially, depending on how it gets implemented. Starting off, when it comes to your open guard stats, you have M1 smash damage. So your smash, you have M1 damage that's equivalent to smash, some of the highest M1 damage in the game, if not the highest. We'll get back to that later. Some of the highest M2 damage in the entire game, same as smash in Freedom. So Freedom smash mode, which I believe actually does more damage on M2s than base smash. Its M1 speed is the same as counter. Its M2 speed is the same as basic, which counter also has the same speed, I believe, although I'm not entirely sure. No block damage, which is very unique about this style, which is a really big positive about the style. It's very unique, and it's why I like it so much and why I'm covering it so in depth. I don't think it will get implemented. It will require a lot of tweaking, but it introduces a lot of elements that I feel like would allow for a style that are very fun to use, but not very fun to fight. Let's just say that. Anyhow, your dashes don't change. Your walk speed is the same as Hanslow, which is pretty crazy. Your M1 range is the same as Ghost, so basic range, and your M2 range same as Ghost, which is actually really large. I think it's the same as Hitman or Counter. I think Counter, like, all I know is the M2 range is above average, which is pretty crazy. And of course, the counter damage is, wait, what? I'm sorry, Hanslow counter damage with smash M. Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about. Going back to what we were saying, this style has M1 smash damage. Some of the highest M1 damage in the entire game. Absolutely destroys block with counter speed. So the fastest M1 speed you can get other than Chrono's Focus. Along with that, you get the same counter multiplier as Hanslow. Keep in mind, Hanslow has the worst base damage in the entire game, on par with Chronos. The only reason his counter damage is so good is because the counter multiplier is insanely big, like really, really large. Like, compared to other styles in this game, it does not make sense. What you're basically getting here is if you land an M2 counter, for example, you're not only doing more damage than Bullet, you might unironically do a third of someone's health with one attack. Keep in mind, your passive is still active from the dual interaction. This still exists within this mode as well. We're not even halfway done through this style suggestion, and already we have a style that you cannot avoid getting countered by under any circumstances, with the highest counter damage in this game, some of the best damage output, and the only weakness it has is no block. And you know what's crazy? Despite all these benefits, the fact that it can't block whatsoever and is forced into this mode essentially might actually equalize the style. Because what you guys don't understand is not being able to block means you cannot block any feints. You take all the damage when you get hit whatsoever, meaning that you just lose all the anti-heal you could possibly save. You just constantly take damage with no escape, meaning essentially that yes, you do a shit ton of damage, but so does your opponents, and a lot more reliably. Overall though, I don't think this weakness of having no block does equalize the sheer damage output this style has. It's very much a double-edged sword, but the mere fact that this style can do so well without this, and the base mode is already absolutely top tier, really makes me me feel like at least the base mode should be nerfed somewhat, which we'll get into later. But already, absolutely insane style suggestion, very extreme, but I do see potential in it and actually being implemented, but it will require some balance adjustments. As it is, I find it unlikely. Moving on, we have the pros and the cons. The cons of the open guard styles that has no block whatsoever, absolutely insane drawback, really bad, especially if you're fighting the likes of Slugger, for example, because that's like a third of your health gone each time you interact with Slugger. You can't switch back to the base style, so you're forced into it. You have a poor backdash, the same as Hitman's. However, considering the range of the style's M2 and its M1s, the counter damage and whatnot, this might actually be a benefit, because depending on how you use your backdash, having a poor backdash that doesn't travel that much distance actually punishes feints a lot better. However, backdash degradation actually did get shadow buffed in this update, so backdashing once immediately makes it so you can't backdash feints, and for some reason M1s and M2s catch your backdash a lot more on reaction for no reason, which is a whole separate issue. So this is a double-edged sword, generally speaking. You also have normal counter intake damage. When it comes to your pros, you gain 30 HP when activated, so that's not fair. That's getting removed immediately if this gets implemented. It does not need this. Its health regen is now above basic, so I believe the same as Corkscrew, which is absolutely insane. Makes ulting as a style just not reliable whatsoever. Stamina regen, same as basic. M1s have slightly less stamina intake, 25% damage reduction on M1s and M2s. Random M2 patterns, that's pretty crazy. And M1 patterns now same as Ippos. In this mode, you get access to something called an open guard meter tomorrow, so a tomorrow meter. You get 3 bars, and each time you fill it up, you get less counter intake on your M1s and M2s. To fill the tomorrow's meter, you could get these bars by using Swift Dodge and countering. Both give 1 bar. Swift Dodge is a mechanic in itself, which we'll cover very shortly, and if you get countered, it will take 1 bar off. But when you do get countered, you take less damage, similar to Iron Fist. Now, for your active ability, you have something called Swift Duck. It's essentially a miniature sway back, but instead you duck the enemy punches, or enemy's punches. Unlike your normal abilities, you will replace the block button F with the Swift Duck ability. This dodge will be the ghost jab of dodges, being highly fast, however also like a ghost jab, will be punished if missed, and you'll be frozen for half a second. A CD is 15 seconds. Being frozen for half a second is not that long, it should be the same as charge. I believe ghost jab's end lag is like a second approximately, and that's enough to get a proper punish, and once you get here, obviously you're out of end lag. The effects of the Swift Duck will perform a semi-perfect dodge when landed, meaning it is a shorter time frame. You can chain your M1s or ult during the time frame, but not your M2s. How would that work? M2s are faster than ults. Okay, well, whatever. You can use this to escape out of an M1 chain into an ultimate. That is extremely strong. Wow. Oh, you can just say, no, you can't ult. That is insane. Although if you time it wrong, you'll be hit by the ultimate, so it is a skill check. When landed, it will count as a counter when hitting your M1s, and it takes 10% of stamina. That is absolutely crazy. I'm gonna be real with you. An additional passive is that you have the ultimate counter. When you're in your open guard stance, gain this passive. When the opponent lands their ultimate on you, instead of their ult animation playing, it'll play the animation of a direct cross counter, basically punishing you for playing the video game. And what I mean by this is that they will take 15% recoil damage to themselves and 50-60% to you, the player. And of course, you know, it depends on the style. So Iron Fist, for example, styles above 50% will do 60%. 50% recoil damage is not regenerable, and if the opponent is below 15%, it won't KO them. That is absolutely crazy. Okay, we'll get to that later. As for the ultimate, Determined Spirit, if your ultimate is landed in base, the recoil damage is 15%, you do 60% damage, and you gain 30% of your open guard mode. As for your ultimate, if landed in your open guard mode, you get a recoil damage total of 25%, you do 70% damage, you gain 2 bars on your tomorrow meter, and as for the animation, the enemy will hit you 3 times, and on the 4th, counter it directly, and then on the end scene, cross counter. But yours is more furious, knocking your opponent. The titles are Wild Kid, Killer Joe, and Messenger from Hell. And of course, there's an example of the end of the ultimate scene and the passive, which I'll show here. Overall, this style suggestion is very unique, very complex, and introduces an entirely new archetype for a style that no other style in this game can actually compare to. It's very extreme, does a crap ton of damage, but takes a low damage in of itself. Instead of blocking whatsoever, you play essentially the same game, but more dodge oriented. So it's still encompassed within the same PvP system and is built for that system. However, it's different in a way so that you're playing in an entirely different manner using the mechanics before for you. It still considers the fact that it's UBG and doesn't go out of that scope pretty much at all. However, even with that in mind, there's a lot about it that's overtuned, and while it does have significant drawbacks, the pros it has makes it so that it can end matches so quickly, so easily, mainly because getting counters with this style is its main thing. It's the best at doing counter damage in the entire game if it's implemented, and on top of that, it's the only style in this game that can consistently get counters without punching first, which, depending on how it's implemented, completely throws out everything I said about this style maintaining within the scope of this game's combat, because it fundamentally just breaks the game in its entirety unless it's not exactly as consistent as punching first and getting a counter. That being, it's way harder to execute and time than it is to counter normally and punch first. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.